Welcome to the AI argument. I'm Frank Prendergast. I'm here with Justin Collery, and we are going to argue about whatever the latest AI news that has caught our eye is. So, Justin, how are you getting on? And what has caught
Been,
your eye?
it's been a great week, Frank. Great to see you again. I hope you had a great week. I've been down with COVID all week, so my brain is a little
Okay.
bit slower, and I'm hoping
Kidding.
that AI will come along sometime soon to help us cure diseases, which was one of the interesting stories that came up this week. Which was I see that was it Moderna, I think it was, are now rolling out. This came out I thought before, but now they've said yes, they're trialing the latest version of OpenAI GPT, and they're hoping it's going to speed the development of drugs that are going to be deployed to the market, and they're going to use AI to help them do that. I mean, what's not to love there? Big pharma, big AI, they come together. Everything's going to work out fine there. They're going to make us all healthier and happier humans as a result. So I think that's a win for humanity. Humanity won, AI nil on that one. How about you?
That's really interesting. So, and it's OpenAI's technology that they're going to be using for this.
Yeah, really interesting. So what they plan to do is, I think they didn't release too many technical details, but they're going to use OpenAI's technology, and I guess a fine tuned or a specifically very specific version of it to help them, a bit like Google's AlphaFold that DeepMind did for doing
Mm.
proteins. So
Right.
instead, they're going to use use the OpenAI technology to, I guess, virtually test potential new drug. So if you had COVID and you wanted to come up with a drug that was going to tackle COVID, you could do a lot of tests virtually in AI land. And then you could probably run some tests on humans to see how humans would react to it. And then you could, after eliminating, you might have a sample size of maybe 1 million potential drugs that could work. You narrow it down to 10, and then you produce those 10 in the real world, and you go through the usual rigors of releasing drugs to the market. But it cuts out that hard part of developing drugs where you have 1 million potentials and you have to whittle it down to the 10 potential one. And I think that's where the technology is going to be brought to bear.
Really interesting. Yeah, and I was just interested that it was OpenAI technology, and I was curious about, yeah, is this the same technology that we're using day to day, or do they have access to, super stuff that we don't have access to yet? I wonder.
I think, and I don't know, are you excited for the upcoming GPT-5 release?
Absolutely, yeah. If it is upcoming, I mean, they've gotten very obscure about what's happening in terms of, Sam Altman saying, well, we might not even do numbered releases anymore. It might just be incremental improvement. And then equally in their safety announcement there a week or two ago, they mentioned that they were working on their new frontier model. I mean, what does that mean? Is that GPT-5 or is that something else? I don't even know. So, but yeah, of course I'm excited for whatever. Of course I'm excited for what comes next.
Yeah, and my understanding is that Moderna and a couple of other select companies are already using whatever that next model is going to be.
Hmm.
So we will all eventually get access, I think, to the same model or a similar model that Moderna is using. We just don't have access to it yet. But it's coming. Some people say it's coming next week, and I mean that will be brilliant. Other people say it's going to be next November after the American election. We don't know yet. Um, how would you feel? I mean, you're a marketing guy, right? So one of the things that OpenAI have done is they've released everything to the free users. So if you're a free user now of
Hmm.
ChatGPT, you've got access to GPTs, you've got access to GPT 4.0, you've got access to code interpreter, you've got access to the analysis, you've got access to the image processing. There's no reason for you to pay for ChatGPT. And now and I'm just an IT guy, right? But this looks to me to be a great way to hoover up a whole load of users and then shortly afterward give a better product and get people to sign up and pay money.
I wonder because I actually think it's a genius move because I have talked to quite a few people who were using the free ChatGPT, which meant that they were using 3.5, which to me, 3.5, there was a big leap from 3.5 to 4. I mean, I would never go back and use 3.5 unless it was a really, really basic task. And
Mhm.
so I'm talking to people that I'm saying, oh yeah, you should pay for ChatGPT. And they're like, yeah, really, I didn't find it that great. It's like, yeah, but you were using 3.5. So I actually think it was a genius move, because it gives people a flavor for like what's actually possible if they pay. But I mean, once they start using it for anything, useful, they're going to run into those limits, and they're going to be given that message. Well, now you can either use 3.5 or you can upgrade. And I think they're going to see a lot more upgrades from those limits than they would from just giving someone a lower model and expecting them to guess what's in the better model.
Yeah, that's an interesting view. That's actually a really good idea. And you don't see then a great pressure from having having the same model in the free and paid tier. You don't see that as an indication that maybe there's a better model coming for the paid tier anytime soon.
I not necessarily. I would hope not. I would hope that they're actually using it as a thing, as a marketing tool, and that when the new model comes out, everyone will have access to that as well. However, at the same kind of rate limits, so free users will only get a couple of queries before they have to upgrade. I think that's a much better model that makes much more sense to me.
Okay, interesting. Did you notice, by the way, this week, and I think this is OpenAI really trying to play to their what are supposed to be their core values. So they released an educational version, or at least a plan for universities and schools to use OpenAI, and also for nonprofits to use OpenAI. So they're really trying to push this idea that our mission is to develop AI for the benefit of all humanity. How do you think that will play out for schools and for a nonprofit?
Interesting. I completely missed that, and I think that's fantastic. Fair play to them, and I think it's probably a smart move because I know it's like this is completely ridiculous, but I genuinely think the Scarlett Johansson thing, where we talked about it in the last episode, where whether you think they sound similar or not, Scarlett Johansson got them to remove one of their ChatGPT voices, and as we discussed in the last episode, OpenAI may not have done anything wrong in that whole scenario. However, it kind of looks like they did. And because it's Scarlett Johansson, it hit all the kind of major media publications. So, like, the public were aware of it. And I actually think, ridiculously, out of all the things that you could possibly criticize them for, that probably gave them a bit of a PR dent, which something like this announcement could really help with, I think.
Interesting. And also, there's obviously been a big PR effort on behalf of OpenAI because I see one of the other things that was always lurking in the background was a lot of people will put out that Sam Altman was fired from Y Combinator. This is a like a boot camp for startups that he used to run in California and became very wealthy from it. And people said, oh, well, he was fired from Y Combinator. And it just cast shade on why would he be fired from it? He was very successful there. Well, they released a statement this week to say that he wasn't in fact fired. That what actually happened was he became the full-time CEO of OpenAI. And then there was a conversation between Y Combinator and Sam Altman to say, well, look we expect you to work on Y Combinator full-time.
Mm.
Which one do you want to do? Do you want to do OpenAI or do you want to do Y Combinator? And he made the decision to do OpenAI. But they said if he had made the decision to stay with Y Combinator, that would have been totally fine with them. So I think what we're seeing is, I don't think they're doing it brilliantly, right? Because it's not front and center, but there is some pushback to try and rehabilitate that PR side of the business.
Yeah, and especially, after the whole Sam Altman being ousted, whenever it was, feels like years ago now. But, I was thinking about this earlier today. I was thinking about the fact that, if it was anybody else, if it was any other company, it just wouldn't have happened. And, it would have tarnished them forever. But I think because AI is so new, because AI is so revolutionary, that they're getting away with a lot more than any other company would get away with. Um, and I think, I think they may be kind of realizing, well, hang on, we're getting away with murder here, but we're not going to get away with murder forever. We probably need to start making ourselves look a little bit more professional, and we better start, talking publicly again about safety and alignment, and we better start making Sam Altman look like he's a credible and consistent and not at all uh, not in any way wild or shooting from the hip.
Yeah, I mean, that's a brilliant segue that we can go into one of two stories, and I'll let you decide, right? There is one other company, I would say, which reminds me, had a CEO that had similar similar questions over them, left and then came back. And that's, of course, Steve Jobs with Apple, right? And he managed to come back. And we have news, we think, in relation to OpenAI and Apple this week. And the other thing I would say is that as part of that rehabilitation is that they care about safety. OpenAI are serious about safety. And this week they released a report showing that they were tackling bad actors using OpenAI products in order to forward their ill intention. I don't know which one of those you want to go for. I'm happy to go
Yeah,
with
let's start with the
either.
safety. Let's start with the safety. They released their kind of safety and alignment statements just after Ilya and Jan Leica left, completely like decimating their safety and alignment team. They released their statement, and then they released this, I'm gonna say, really bizarre report on
Mm.
threat actors using their product. And I thought, wow, this is going to be fascinating. This is going to be amazing. I can't wait to read this. What have they discovered? What are people doing? What do we need to be aware of? And it was really dull. And I'm gonna let me see. Let me pull up a quote from it, which I thought was really interesting from the perspective that they're basically saying that the threat actors were, completely ineffective at using their tools. Um, let's see. Just uh, no sugar. Sorry, I can't find the exact quote. So, but basically, yeah, they're saying, look, these guys were completely ineffective at generating any kind of authentic engagement online because the threat actors were basically using ChatGPT to create comments and create posts that were designed to kind of divide people and incite arguments, and in some cases, obviously, a lot of them around various different political agendas. But they basically said, yeah, these guys used our tools, but they were completely ineffective. So
Frank,
that's a very different message to what we're hearing from, say, non-threat actors using the tools. If you hear from OpenAI about people using their tools, more productive, more creative, etc. And studies are. We can talk later about another survey that shows that these are the benefits that people are getting out of AI. Why are these threat actors not getting any benefits from using these powerful tools? I find it really interesting that the report dealt with a number of cases where there was no benefit to using the tools to people who were using it negatively.
Frank,
Fascinating.
and Friday, calm down. Everything's going to be fine, right? But there are some times when you don't want to know how the sausage is made, and there are some times when you shouldn't know how the sausage is made. And this is an example of the latter, right? So if you're talking about threats and ways that bad actors can use the technology, well, you don't want to broadcast exactly how they use the technology. So what OpenAI are doing here is they're flagging that here, look, we know that bad actors are trying to use our technology, and we want to let you know that these are the types of things that they're doing. We're obviously not going to tell you the most successful and the really good way, because that's just going to give actors that are a little bit bad ways of being even badder, right? But what I will say about this is that I would much prefer, it makes me feel much more comfortable that OpenAI are doing this type of research and combating these types of dangers because they're real and they're present and they happen now, as opposed to the Ilya and Jan monster under the bed type thing where it's like, oh my God, AI might kill us all. No, we'd all be long dead by a bad guy using an AI really well to help them further their aims before the AI kills us.
Well, I don't think it's either or. Unfortunately, I think we're at trek from both. But I guess my point is that I don't believe that this report does show that they're taking it seriously, because I don't believe that the only threat actors, as they call them in the report, I don't believe that the only threat actors that are using their tools are somehow managing to use them completely ineffectively and having no impact whatsoever on society. I mean, it just doesn't stack up if we believe, what they're saying on the other hand, that we can all be more productive by using these tools. It's a very, very odd report, and it's very vague. It's not, they give us these case studies, but they don't say, these are 6 case studies out of 2,000, 2,000,000, or, however many. It's a weird report.
Do you not think, though, also that it makes a very good, I mean, I think it makes a great argument to say that the danger here isn't, OpenAI are clearly taking this seriously. They're looking out for the flags, red flags. It's a bit like anti-money laundering when you go into the bank. If their flags are popped up, somebody should review it, and they're doing that. So that's good. But the danger is that as LLMs and AIs become more and more powerful, it's possible in a year that I could run a GPT 4.0 on my phone locally, and then there's no way to control what people are using those particular LLMs for. So,
Yeah.
it highlights maybe the dangers, the potential dangers of open source, non-controlled AIs.
Absolutely, yeah, and maybe that's exactly the problem with this paper is that it's dealing with threat actors who are using OpenAI's technology, whereas quite possibly the threat actors that we should be worried about, as you say, are using open source LLMs, possibly running locally. Yeah, so and we just don't know what those people are up to. It also highlights, I think, an interesting issue around privacy, as in how are they flagged? Some of the stuff was creating political comments, and they were created, you know, nefariously for bad purposes. However, if you read some of the material, it's not material that you would imagine would get flagged in anybody's system because there's not there's not much in there. Now, I know there was a whole lot more going on, as you say, behind the scenes. They're not going to share with us everything they were doing. They're not going to share with us exactly how they find out. But it is a good reminder as well to us all that, like, yes, they're monitoring, and yes, whatever you put in is going into their system, and they absolutely have to monitor it and flag it and whatever. So even if you're not training, even, people are concerned about putting data into these systems and having that data train the system. But even if that's not what you're concerned about, you're still sending your information to a company who have to be monitoring for X, Y, or Z. So again, just to be I think for people to be aware, it's not like a 100% completely private conversation between you and ChatGPT.
Do you think there should be? Do you think there should be different controls based on different countries? So, what's politically sensitive or, culturally not acceptable in one country is totally acceptable in another country. So in Ireland, whatever, it might be one thing. In French, even if you ask it a question in English, it should flag it up as you're a threat to French nationhood, right? Not like that at all. And God knows in certain parts, even in America, even down to different region, different things could be culturally acceptable. I mean, a question that might
Mm.
be totally acceptable in Tennessee might be totally off the wall in New York. So as you point out, right, these AI companies are going to have a lot of cultural power in the future. And who decides what's right and wrong in a particular country? So should it be that we have OpenAI Ireland, OpenAI UK, OpenAI, and maybe the people in those territories decide what's okay and what isn't?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very fine line, isn't it? Because um, I think, on one hand, yes, I think I'd need to think about this more because, yeah, on one hand, yes, I think that there are cultural differences that probably do need to be taken into consideration. And, in a way, we saw this with Facebook when they just like released Facebook into certain regions, and then it was used to incite hate and riots and, all kinds of used for all kinds of bad purposes. So on one hand, we don't want that happening. On the other hand, we don't necessarily want a very restrictive regime to restrict it down to, only being able to say positive things about the the ruling government or whatever it might be. So really tricky. Yeah, really tricky, but one that I think, yeah, as you say, we're gonna have to deal with.
There was a couple of other things in this week, Frank. I'm interested to get your views on. So what we're starting to see again, especially with OpenAI, is more and more content creation companies are starting to sign deals with OpenAI to make their content available through OpenAI. Do you think that is a good thing or a bad thing from the point of view of content creators?
You know, Mark Schaefer has a really interesting blog post on this about how content creators need some kind of umbrella organization so that we can benefit from the use of our content in training LLMs, which I think is a really interesting concept. So yeah, again, it's such a huge question, um, because if we if we just take like where we were, say 6 months to a year ago,
Mm.
the LLMs have these incredible capabilities, but they're trained on who knows what by all of us. And, we still have no real rulings from any court cases that are indicating what way this is going to go in various different territories. So should we be benefiting from the content that we create that was used in LLMs? In general, I think it's a good thing for the creators to be compensated. But on the other hand, we have OpenAI saying that like it's not really going to be possible to train unless they have access to all of the data that they've traditionally trained on. So therefore, how is it going to be sustainable to just to pay for content going forward? And I know this is it's research that's going on at the moment in terms of, can we train on smaller amounts of data? Can you train on a mix of real data and synthetic data? Just a huge amount of questions around it. So I mean, I think it's great. I'd love to be paid for content that I created that was going into the LLMs. But on the other hand, if it's not economically, key question.
Yeah. And Frank, I think I just lost you there for a second. So, um, I was thinking this week. So I'm not sure, right? So I have this hypothesis that in 10 years, everybody, let's say, that does my type of work, AI work, and lots of other works, and I think content creators too, I think we're all going to be out of a job, and we'll have our UTI, and we'll all be going to the toilet regularly. And, but that doesn't all happen.
Universal thriving income for anyone who
Sorry.
doesn't
Yes.
regularly. Yeah.
Uh, Yes. So what I'm considering is that everybody, or a large number of people, are going to lose their jobs over the next 10 years, right? And I'm
Mm.
totally comfortable with that. I think that's a good thing, and we'll all go off and retire and live happily ever after. That's the sort of a Star Trek type outcome. And but I could be wrong, right? So I contacted an economist friend of mine during the week to see if they would set up a bet that we could do. And so the nice thing about these sort of ideas is they're a hypothesis, and you can test the hypothesis. So if, let's say, a large number of people are going to lose their jobs because of AI, you don't have to wait for 10 years to find out, right? You should be able to see something. So I was asking the question, well, what is when is there a noticeable economic impact that you can see? Okay, yeah, this is actually going to have an impact. So 5 to 10% of jobs, that seems to be an agreed sort of limit as to when that will happen. And I'm looking at it going, well, 5 to 10% of jobs, if I'm right, that impact, we should see it. I'd certainly take a bet of in the next 5 years, but actually at 2.5 years, I think you might start to see certainly 5% and edging towards, and the rate picking up. So I was questioning to see would he take a bet. He said, "No, I'm going to keep my powder dry." But very interestingly, what he said was he sent me an article from another economist, and in that particular article, they spoke of different technological changes. Basically, we don't know, right? So it could be, to give you different examples, right? We used to import ice from the Arctic Circle and bring it down and store it, and then fridges were invented, and that totally wiped out, right, the ice industry. So if you worked in the ice industry, yes, everybody lost their job there, right? And so AI could be like the fridge, and it could do that. But also then there are examples of other industries where it's a tool, and the tool allows you to create hyper individualistic products for consumers that they're willing to pay more for. And so actually it generates more demand for those types of skills because more people want to make more money, and they make more money and become more wealthy as a result. So there's and actually software will be an example of an industry like that. That people become quite wealthy, and the more there just isn't enough software developers in the world. You just can't have enough of them. So we don't know enough yet about the impacts, but I think we will know in the next 2 or 3 years. But you had spotted a couple of surveys of how different companies are using AI during the week.
Yeah, there was two recent interesting surveys. One was from Microsoft and LinkedIn, and that was kind of I think they surveyed like 31,000 knowledge workers around the globe. And so that was interesting because I think like they claimed that like 75% of knowledge workers, if I remember correctly, were using AI. Um, and then you had another study which was it was done with it was carried out by YouGov, and I'm trying to remember who commissioned it. But that was just for the general public. And what they found was like frequent use. So 50% of the online population across the 6 countries that they surveyed had even heard of ChatGPT. But
Had
when
not
they,
heard or had heard of it.
y- well, either because it was 50%. Yeah.
That you know, ski logic.
That's the, um, but then where it got really interesting was they dug into like what about like frequent use of ChatGPT. So ChatGPT was like the most of all of the tools. ChatGPT was the one people had heard of the most. And so they dug into like how many people were using it frequently, and then it dropped way down. So like in the US, I think it was the highest, and that was only like 7%. And interestingly as well, of those who were using it, they tended to be using it like a little bit more in their personal life than they were in their work life. So there was just some really interesting stuff going in there. And also it just reminded me again of like what a filter bubble that you and I live in. Cause we're like, yeah, everyone knows about AI. Everyone's using it at this stage. Everyone's getting productivity gains and, having a ball with AI. And no, it's like 7% in the US, and let's see, it was like 2% in France and the UK, 2% of people using ChatGPT frequently. So I thought that was really interesting. And then back to the Microsoft survey, they found that people using AI, the self-reported benefits that people were saying that they were getting were like save time, be more creative, enjoy work more, and focus on their most important work. Which I mean, that's fantastic. I think that's
Yeah.
brilliant. I mean, that's how I feel about it myself as well.
Yeah.
Um, and the other interesting thing that I thought was in there was they looked at power users, and they said what power users do differently to other users is research and try new prompts, experiment with different ways of using AI, pause before tasks and ask if AI could help, um, keep trying if they don't get the perfect response. And this one I found really interesting. Start and finish the day with AI, using AI to prep. Um, that one, because all the others, I was like, yeah, I feel like I'm doing those to some degree,
Yeah.
but starting and finishing the day using it to prep, I was like, wow, what does that even mean? How are they using it for that? What is that? So I haven't figured that out yet, but I'm going to. Marcy, I was talking to Marcy about it, and she said, "Well, why don't we ask AI what that would involve?" So I'm going to do that.
All right. He's all right.
And then the other, because those were the things that stuck out to me as somebody who, it's just myself and Marcy. We're the entire business, and we work with a lot of like very small businesses as well. But the report focused a lot on like larger organizations. And one of the things that they found, I don't know, did they coin this term for the report or what, but they had this term in it, BYOAI, bring your own AI. So what they're finding is organizations have no idea what to do with AI or what to do about it or how to encourage it or what tools they should be using. But employees are sneaking AI in the back door quietly, telling nobody about it, getting all these gains in productivity and focusing on important things, being more creative and enjoying their work more, and telling nobody about it because they're afraid that it'll be outlawed, and they don't want that, they don't want it to be, they don't want it to be banned because of having all these benefits for them. And secondly, they don't want anybody going, oh, hang on, if they're getting all those benefits, do we need as many of these people as we thought we did?
Sure.
So I thought that was fascinating as well.
And also add to that corporates are terrified of AI. And the more regulated your industry is, the more terrified your organization is. Um, and it's funny, actually, it fills me with so much joy to see companies like Moderna sort of jump in and embrace the technology, because a lot of corporate are, scared that PII information will leak. They're scared that, some IP from the organization will leak. And I mean, as a technologist, I'm looking at going, there's absolutely, like, obviously I'm the gung ho guy. I'm the guy who wants to use more of it now, and then the fun police are there saying, no, no, but wait a while. So the corporates themselves, I think, have an agenda to try and stop it. But there is one story that caught my mind this week that I think we should close on, and that was the release of the world's first bioprocessor. And if this doesn't frighten you, Frank, nothing will. So for those who don't know what a bioprocessor is, a company in Switzerland, I believe it is growing little great brain modules, I think is what they call them. So basically brain cells. And they were hooking them up to a computer. And you can purchase some time on these brain computers. And if I'm to quote from, they had quite an interesting Final Spark is the name of the company that are doing this. Final Spark even sounds a bit creepy to me, to be honest with you.
It does sound like it's kind of a dystopian sci-fi movie for sure.
It did. But anyway, they claimed that training a single LLM like GPT-3 required approximately 10 gigawatt hours, about 6,000 times greater than the energy consumption of the average European citizen in a whole year. Which is okay, because GPT-3 is probably 6,000 times more productive than the average European in a whole year. So that seems like a pretty good trade. But they're going to reduce the power consumption. And we talked about this last week. The power consumption will come down, but using human brain cells to do it might be a step too far. What do you think?
I was I was fascinated by this, but I mean, it's so far above my pay grade that I was like, wow, like, what does this mean? I mean, I downloaded the research paper, I threw it into Claude, I asked Claude to explain it to me as if I was a 5-year-old, and I still didn't understand it. But so if Claude was to be believed, it was pretty interesting, because they get cells, I think, from like adult humans, and then they're able to somehow like get them to like retrograde back to their original state and then grow them back into something else. That's the sound of my brain exploding for anyone who's listening. But I just focused on the energy consumption bit, and also the fact that, yes, I'm now living in the weird dystopian sci-fi movies that I watched as a teenager.
All right, here's my question for you though, right? Because an open research question, right? So let's say we could grow that idea, right? So at the moment, it's at a very small scale, they're doing it, right? But so let's say we grew enough of these brain cells in order to run Claude open, right? Let's say we could do that, right? And there is an open question that says, are these models sentient or not, right? And so, like, my question to you is, if I could show, could they be sentient because they're now human brain cells and they're running an OpenAI model or a Claude model, does that then become a sentient being? Would you accept that?
I have absolutely no idea. I have no idea whatsoever. I think, yes, I can see where you're going with this, that it's going to make it even more complicated, because people are not going to be able to say, well, it's just a computer, which I don't believe anyway. As in, I think, I think it's really the debate around, like, sparks of sentience, and we don't know. We don't understand our own sentience. So how are we possibly able to say, well, oh, we don't understand our own sentience, but this definitely isn't sentient. So I'm already on the fence about sentience, not to mind once we bring wetware into the whole equation. So on that philosophical note,
yes, we should talk about this more. We have a bad history. I just like the word wetware, but we have a bad history. We have a bad history with acknowledging the sentience of even animals, I think, and so on. So how good are we going to be at acknowledging the sentience of something that's more intelligent than us? Only time will tell. Frank, been a great conversation as always.
Always a pleasure, Justin. I will see you next week, and have a great weekend.
Enjoy. Talk to you.